Welcome to Counter-Strike 2, a game where we use the same couple of weapons over and over and over, so setting up your loadout is going to be pretty easy. First, I'm going to go over what you absolutely need in your loadout, then go over your free slots where you have a choice based on personal preference and playstyle. First, the T-side pistols. The Glock sucks, but you're forced to pick it. The first weapon I would recommend equipping is the P250. Sometimes on full eco rounds, it's worth spending the extra $300 just to not have to use the Glock. Next, the Tech 9 is an absolute must. It has near perfect first shot accuracy while running at full sprint. Anything on the T side with good running accuracy is gonna be a good choice in CS2. It's also very common for many T side eco strats to revolve around wide swinging bomb sites with the Tech 9s. They're very useful, they come into play. Next, I absolutely recommend you equip the revolver. Just kidding, the Deagle. You gotta equip the Deagle. It's a one-tap headshot weapon, risky to use, but if you have good fundamentals, you can take down a full buying player with it. The Deagle is an essential part of the Counter-Strike meta that hasn't changed in CS2. For the final pistol slot, you have a choice. Dualies are only really good on the pistol round because they have awful armor penetration. If you plan on raid bossing your teammates on the first round or buying dualies and then getting like a flash or a smoke or something like that, then equip the dualies, it's a good choice. There's also the CZ75, which is more useful as a CT side weapon. I think the Tech 9 is gonna fulfill the role of a $500 aggro weapon better than the CZ75. So personally, I equip the dualies and then I never buy them. Next, we have the T-side mid weapons. Or should I say weapon, because you only need the MAC-10. This is the go-to eco SMG. It's great for run and gun, even jump and gun. One thing I've done, and don't tell nobody this, I set up a bind to switch to follow recoil. It makes the MAC-10 really broken. Just keep the crosshair on the bad guy and hold the left mouse button. This gives you 4 free slots. There's no wrong answers here.
Except the PP Bison, the M249, the Negev, and the Sawed-Off.
The M249 is overall the worst weapon in the game, not because of its stats, but because it's so darn expensive, at $5,200, which is much more expensive than the AWP. The PP Bison is probably the worst choice for SMG. The MAC-10 is $350 cheaper, and it fulfills the same role. The Negev is funny, that's its role, but honestly, I would never recommend buying it on the T side, even as a joke. It's mostly a CT side troll weapon because of its incredibly slow movement speed.
The Negev was not meta.
The Sawed-Off is horrible at any range where you're not standing directly next to your enemy. It would work on the CT side where you can camp a close range angle, but on the T side, you want to have a more versatile weapon, and the MAC-10 fulfills the cheap close range angle weapon role much better. So you gotta choose 4 of the remaining weapons. The UMP... Wait. I forgot to add the UMP to the picture. Screw the picture! The UMP is cheap and has high damage, but it has a slow rate of fire and bad damage fall off over distance, which makes it kind of a close range rifle. It's only $150 more expensive than the MAC-10, and I think the MAC-10 fills the same role, so I don't equip the UMP, but you totally can if you like the playstyle better. The next tier of SMGs are the MP7 and the MP5. The MP7 is a good all-around SMG, but it's kind of expensive. That's the main reason people don't use it very much. The MP5 is very interesting. Stats-wise, it's kind of a worse MP7, but it's the only T-side option for a suppressor, and suppressors are very interesting. They make the gun silent at a certain distance, and they prevent you from showing up on radar due to gun sounds. They also don't have tracers, which are very prominent in CS2. This is something I see used at the top level of competitive Counter-Strike solely for the suppressor, so it's very situational. The most powerful SMG is the P90. It's expensive, and it only has a $300 kill reward, but Counter-Strike 2 has a ridiculous peeker's advantage problem right now, so running around the corner and spraying a P90 is extremely powerful. So I have it equipped, but I do think the better option for a buy-round weapon when you can't afford an AK-47 is the Galil, which is $550 cheaper than the P90. Speaking of stupid alternatives to the Galil that you run around corners spamming, there's the XM1014. The auto shotty is seeing a lot more use in CS2. It's $200 more expensive than the Galil, but you get a $900 kill reward with it. For shotguns, I also equip the Nova. It's only $1050, so with a single kill, it almost pays for itself. I buy these on eco rounds where I want to take a little bit of a gamble. The T-side rifles are pretty straightforward because you have 5 slots and 6 rifles. Pop quiz. What's the name of the T auto sniper? You don't know. I don't know. Nobody knows, because nobody's ever bought it. Equip the rest. The Galil is a cheap rifle when you can't buy an AK-47. The AK-47 is your default buy because of the one-hit headshot. The SG-553, I don't ever buy this, but it has much better accuracy than the AK-47, so it's useful at longer ranges. The Scout is good when you're playing the AWP position, but you can't afford an AWP, and the AWP is the AWP. You have to equip the AWP even if you're not an AWPer and you don't plan on ever using it, just for the case for when you have enough money that you need to drop one for your teammates. Your money is not your money, it's your team's money. CT side is a little more interesting. For pistols, you already have a choice for your starting weapon. The USPS has a suppressor, and the P2000 has 1 extra round in the magazine. And 2 extra magazines, which is significant. I've run out of ammo with the USPS many times. Your decision is more ammo or a suppressor. My suggestion is to play with the USPS, and then if you're running out of ammo a lot, if it is a problem, then switch to the P2000 because that's probably better for you. Please don't equip the revolver unless it's for a funny joke. Next, the P250 is still a good one to equip, and the Deagle is a must-have. For the rest, you have to make a choice and leave one of them off. Again, dualies are great for pistol rounds, but so is armor. The CZ is a full auto pistol, so it's great on CT Eco rounds where you can play up close and catch your opponent off guard and steal their weapon. Since the CZ doesn't have very much ammo at all, you really do need to steal a weapon. And then there's the 5.7, which is like a more expensive P250. The big advantage here is that it one-taps a helmeted player up close. I like to use it as a vanity secondary to the AWP because it's good up close, but consider which is better, a P250 and a flashbang or a 5.7. I think a higher skilled player is going to prefer the flashbang, but I have the 5.7 on my list because I don't really use the dualies. Next, the mid-tier, and kind of the same thing with T-side, the MP9 is the only weapon you absolutely need here. It is an incredibly strong, light buy, force buy, anti-eco, and honestly, it's even good on gun rounds. I like it for the fast rate of fire and the easy recoil pattern. It goes like straight up. This thing's like the Ark of the Covenant. It melts faces. We already talked about a lot of these. The big difference here is that the Negev can actually be more useful on the defender side, so I'm not ruling it out. And the Mag 7 isn't a horrible idea for camping at close angle, but personally, since it's around the same price as the MP9, I think the MP9 is just a better option. My CT side mid looks pretty much the same as my T side, except I have the MP9 instead of the Mag 10 and the MP7 instead of the MP5. And I can't stress this enough, this is really up to you. You can play around with this list because for the most part, you're just going to be buying the one cheap SMG. Now for the CT side rifles, this one is kind of tough. I do think that you're required to have the M4A1S in the AWP, and the auto sniper is just a bad idea, which means you have to leave one of the remaining weapons off. The FAMAS is a cheaper rifle, I wouldn't call it a cheap rifle, that's useful to buy when you can't afford one of the M4s. It has a burst fire mode, but I don't think it's very useful. I'm gonna be a little bit controversial here. I don't think you have to equip the FAMAS. On a force buy, I usually find myself getting an MP9 or one of the other mid-tier weapons. The only negative I see to not equipping the FAMAS is that sometimes your teammates will ask you for a drop, and when you can't afford an M4, they're expecting a FAMAS. You might not get a great reaction when you drop them an XM1014 or something. I really like having both M4s equipped. I find myself buying both of them depending upon my position and the economic situation. Pro players are purchasing the M4A1S about 2/3 of the time, and the M4A4 about 1/3 of the time in CS2. I highly recommend watching my video on the differences between them from the latest CSGO patch. Everything I said still applies in CS2. The AUG is seeing more use in CS2. It's mainly useful for holding longer ranged angles. I prefer using the M4s because of the slower rate of fire of the AUG. And of course the Scout. If you just never use the Scout, it's not a bad idea to leave off your list. I've decided to be a little bit of a rebel and leave the FAMAS off my list. Here's my final loadout. Please don't just copy what I've done. I want you to think about the role of each weapon and when you'd use it along with your own personal preferences when making your loadout. I think in any skill, it's important to learn the rules. So what I've taught you here is the rules, the correct way to do things, and then once you've gotten a good level of mastery, you'll have a good idea of when to break those rules based on your own style. So I want you to go off and develop your own style.
Just don't equip the revolver.
Thanks for watching. I'm TheWarOwl, and I still have no closer.